approaching situations from a place of extreme focus, taking a lot of energy that's down at the base and then focusing into a single point, which is a masculine trait, and then also just using that for the purpose of penetrating the world and making an impact.
All right, so speaking of penetration.
Yeah, so this past year I've been meditating on this, and for me, I can put my attention on how feelings in my body, what I'm experiencing. I can put my attention on a mantra, a series of words, or I could put my attention on a symbol, a visual symbol. And so what I've been putting it on is a pyramid.
Okay.
And so, you have this wide base and then you have this point at top. It's a penetrating object. And so it's a very masculine object. And so one of the things I've been doing is placing that pyramid in my third eye and really approaching situations from a place of extreme focus, taking a lot of energy that's down at the base and then focusing into a single point. Which is a masculine trait, and then also just using that for the purpose of penetrating the world and making an impact.
So before we get deeper into penetration, see what I did there? Welcome back to another edition of Life to the Max podcast with your hosts,
Janna Breslin
and Evan DeMarco. I think we just did it right. Today we are fortunate enough to have on the show Mike Bledsoe. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we, ladies and gentlemen at home, decided that we were going to bring you a special edition of the Life to the Max podcast and do it here in La Jolla, because apparently we just keep coming back to La Jolla to film. But this particular setting is kind of nice.
It's not the worst view.
This is how I like to start my day.
Yeah.
The rest of my day, I've won.
Exactly.
We've won the day. Done.
So speaking of penetration, we always, I was, in tantric sexuality, we talk about orgasmic meditation first thing in the morning. And one of the benefits of that is that when you begin your day like that, you've won, right? It's like you get to work and your boss starts yelling at you about your TPS report. You're like, who gives a shit?
You start your day with orgasmic meditation?
Only on days of the week ending in Y.
Nice. Nice.
So back to penetration. We're going to cover a lot of the stuff here, and I think a lot of this is going to be a tee up to an experience that we're all going to get to share in Costa Rica in a couple months. So we want to get a little bit about your history, but I love this conversation about you taking your masculine pyramid into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
I actually love that concept, though. You never think of a pyramid as like, coming to the pinnacle of this point of strength and direction and focus. And visualizing that is actually pretty profound. Now that I think about it, I'm like, wait, that's a great example.
Yeah, be the pyramid.
Be the pyramid.
now my question is, from an energetic perspective, does that mantra, does that visualization leave you open to receiving, which is kind of more of the female side of the energetic, pyramid? And we look at triangles as the upward triangle is masculine, the downward triangle is feminine.
That's right.
Do you feel like in that context you're energetically able to really receive a lot of what's coming at you in the universe?
Ideally, you would be holding both, and I definitely have seasons and cycles. So I've gone through periods of time where my intention is to be more in the receiving mode, more in my feminine, and other times be more in my masculine. I'm in a season right now where I'm much more in my masculine. So it's not something that I'll keep true forever. And if guys are watching and listening to this isn't like the right answer for everybody right now. This is when I'm meditating right now. The thing that I desire more in my life is more focus. That's my primary intention right now. And so I find that taking all that energy and driving it into my third eye and having more of that masculine energy is where I want to develop right now.
Well, and then, I think let's look at that, right? Because I think a lot of people hear masculine and feminine, and there's some really weird Western archetypes that surround that, but this isn't, as we just said, curls for the girls type of masculine energy. I mean, it's really looking at how are you embracing the world? How are you looking at what it is that you want to bring to it versus how are you receiving. So, let's talk a little bit about that before we get into who the hell are you? Let's talk about that, and then you can penetrate us with the
Who am I?
who are you?
That's the great philosophical question of this millennia. I don't know. I don't know who I am. I'm a series of identities. We talked about this before the show. I guess we could put some masks on, and I'm a coach. I'm a performance coach. I help people with mental performance, emotional resilience, and help lead people through spiritual experiences. I do that through sharing messages on podcasts, Instagram, and I love to travel the world, try on new things, share with people. Tomorrow could be completely different. Who knows?
I really hope not, because this isn't a bad way to.
We're crushing the game.
We really are. Like, are we getting paid to do this?
I think so.
Okay. Today's show is brought to you by.
Actually, it's coming in. It's like I do all this stuff, and then money just comes in. It's like that's a really cool trick. That's something I didn't know how to do a decade ago.
No.
Is create so much value in so many different directions that you have multiple revenue streams coming in. That's something that most people couldn't pull off 10, 20 years ago. That's a newer concept.
We talk about that a lot.
For that any person can access. It used to only be for the royalty or the very few had at the top were able to access that type of situation.
We've always been conditioned to believe that our outputs determine our inputs, right? You go to work from 9 to 5, you do that 5 days a week until you die or until you get your gold watch, and that determines your monthly annual income, how much you can spend. And so the reconditioning of how people think, especially in the Life to the Max world, is how do you create a life that allows you to experience all the beauty and splendor that this world has to offer and not be stuck with that. I get 2 weeks of vacation a year. How am I going to plan that with my kids and all that? So these are a lot of things that we like to talk about is how do you diversify your sources of income and how do you make yourself so valuable that people will continue to pay you regardless if you're naked on a beach in Colombia or,
Yeah. You know what? It's, I love this topic. I love this topic. So one of the things that I coach people on, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and is to start talking about money and as something that you receive. So most people go, I want to earn $1 million a year. I'm like, no, let's not earn that. Like, let's not exchange our personal value for money. I don't want to live in that world. And by the way, isn't that where we put like dead people? So I'm a language geek, right? So these are the things I think about. I'm like, earn. I've got a whole list.
That's a good one.
But we start with words because words create images in our mind, and the images in our mind start creating the reality and how we perceive the world and what we project into the world, and it impacts our actions.
Thought precedes energy.
Exactly. And so what we end up doing is I say, hey, let's talk about how we receive money, because you don't have to work in order to receive money. The wealthiest people on the planet are not earning what they're making. They've set up systems that catch energy. We think about money as energy, and we create structures. And going back to the masculine thing, a very masculine thing to do is to create structure. And you can create business structures that divert energy a certain direction, and you just keep diverting that energy. And having more money is really just having more energy and managing more energy. I don't think about it as my money. So the money in my bank account is not really my money. This is, I'm basically gifted, and I have developed the ability to manage that much energy. It's like, okay, there's $100,000 coming through the bank account. I have developed myself in a way that allows me to hold that. This is why someone who wins the lottery they're going to lose it. They're going to be broke. Yeah, they'll be broke soon because they can't hold that much energy. It'll break them. And so it's not about, it's really about continually setting up structures that do that. Now, the average person, the structures they've inherited is, the factory worker idea. 9 to 5, unions, go to school, be in a box. The
Scarcity mindset.
The structure is very narrow. What we inherit is very, very narrow, and it is very scarcity. It's like you only get this much money, and I've talked to people who I say, hey, I can teach you how to make 10 times the money you make right now, and they look at me and go, are you crazy? I already work 50 hours a week. Like I'm gonna tell them they have to work 500 hours a week or something. I'm like, I've had people respond with that, and I go, holy shit, man. Like I forgot that's how people, they're so stuck in that way of thinking that they think that time equals money. Right. And then they think the only way I can make more money is either to do more time or make more dollars per hour or whatever. They don't realize that money could just be multiplying in the background because they set up some system 5 years ago. Yeah. So you got to destroy structures before you can build new ones. If you just try to build on the old foundation, it's no good. But that's what people are doing. I'm gonna just read more books. I'm gonna do more of this. I'm gonna do more of this. I gotta learn more. It's like, good luck. You gotta go through destruction first. Destroy what you assumed was true. Everything is learned, and that goes super, super deep. And who you are is learned. Every behavior is learned. Your personality is learned. And so in order to take on new structures, you have to get rid of the old structures, the old ways of being, the old identities, adopt new ones, and put those in place. And if you go, well, I don't want to do that, then you aren't going to do the work necessary to have the freedom.
One of the things that you talk about a lot in your coaching programs, one of the things that I love, and we will definitely put your show notes in our show notes. Did I get that right?
No.
Damn it!
There will be show notes.
There'll be show notes.
We don't know where, but they'll be there.
And Janna's going to tap dance at some point. Your podcast information, but I love how you listen, and we've just talked about this earlier today, is you are one of the great active listeners in the podcast space. And that's fantastic. But you also really coach people on developing themselves so that they can have this down the road. And I think one of the things that is so fascinating about you is you don't shy away from the fact that it's not easy. And there's so many people out there selling, like, here, join my mastermind, join my coaching program, and you somehow think that you sign up for your $25,000 and all the answers there. Like, you sign up or you work with you, and it's like, that's when the work really begins.
Yeah.
And I love that.
So much of the success is breaking. Have you read the book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself?
I love that book.
I'm reading that right now.
Yeah.
So everything you're saying is just speaking to me on so many levels. And that's exactly, I feel like, what needs to happen is you have to break and destroy parts of yourself to move forward in the ways you're speaking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gone through some very destructive processes that made my friends and family nervous. And
give us an example of that.
I went through a summer. I went through a nihilist phase.
Really?
And so it was.
I don't care about that. Can we move it? You and I are wordsmiths.
Yeah. So, basically, didn't believe in anything, right? I read this series of books. There's this trilogy, which I'll share with you the name of it after the show. I don't like putting the book out there because it was the most impactful book I read. Not because it made my life better, but because it destroyed everything. Yeah. As I was reading it, it was unwinding my mind.
Is this fiction or nonfiction?
This is nonfiction.
Okay.
And the guy is probably one of a dozen truly enlightened beings on the planet type of situation. Like, most people that are like claiming enlightenment or gurus are,
charlatans.
Yeah, it's and there's a difference between spirituality and enlightenment. These are not the same, and in fact, most spiritual practices will take you away from enlightenment. And so, I'm going through this series of books, and he has these practices. If you take on the practices, then he basically tells you how to become enlightened in the first, half of the first book. And I'm going through it. I'm going, well, I'm not doing that because he doesn't actually make enlightenment. That process doesn't sound beautiful at all. It sounds insane. And so, and I'm enjoying myself. But just completing the books, and my recommendation is a trilogy, is read all of them as quickly as possible. And I read the books, and I started watching, like the idea, the framework. So we all operate from frameworks, or we have these mental frameworks. One of them is the spectrum. On the left side, we can talk about sexuality. On the left side, you have straight, and on the right side, you have gay, right? And people fall somewhere in the spectrum, Maybe some people just, yeah. That spectrum just fucking vanished for me. And I didn't know that could happen. But like I could mentally understand what that spectrum was, but everything that I had applied to that scale, I realized was not real. It was complete fiction. And somebody had created a scale, and we all adopted it, and someone goes on a chalkboard and draws it out, and we all go, yeah. So it's a way of thinking. And so my ability to apply that scale to anything vanished in a single afternoon. And all of a sudden, everything became, it's like what was a left to right scale became a sphere. And everything became fluid from moment to moment. And I realized that anything could change, but not in a direction that's even predictable.
Yeah.
And so, I don't remember why I'm talking about this, but yeah, I went through a destructive phase. And so one of the things that was destroyed was my ability to apply that mental framework to anything. And so I've now been able to go back and use it, but I'm not tied to it anymore. I can use it in a conversation, in a situation, and then completely let it go and be free. But most of us are tied to these mental frameworks. So I get to choose my frameworks for situations, I get to use it and then let it go. I used to be very tied to these things. And there's a lot of things that are just very assumed to be, like, this is just how it works. And it's like, that's actually not true. None of this works the way that our mental framework set it up. It can be useful for a situation, but when the situation's gone, let it go.
I think my mind's blown.
It makes so much sense when you say that, like the spherical way of looking instead of this linear.
Right.
I mean,
and the sphere has no limit.
right.
And that was another thing, is I started thinking in spherical, and then I realized I hit the wall of that, and I go, oh, the only thing limiting me is my own mind. And then I had an experience where I literally cracked outside of that edge, and it felt like I was inside of an egg, and the shell was cracking. And then I went out, and I could barely breathe. It was just too much. It was so much space that it broke my brain. It was more space than I'd ever experienced before in my mind.
So how did your life change after that? Like, probably in every single way, right? Because then you apply every aspect of your life and like ways of thinking to that model.
Well, I spent the summer where I did not know how to make sense of the world from there. I don't know if I was a true nihilist or not, but like nothing fucking mattered. Mm-hmm. There was no good, there was no bad, there were no. There's consequences to actions, but the consequences don't matter. It was. My wife at the time was talking to my friends, and like, he's gonna end up living under a bridge. He just doesn't give a shit about anything. And it was true. I was thinking I could go live under a bridge and I'd be okay with that. Like, that's cool. So I did a lot of partying for a summer and even got bored with it. What happened is I ended up getting bored, where I go, okay, I'm gonna start choosing. So I got to spend a lot of time in this destructive process of letting it all go and then going, okay, if I really want to, I have the opportunity to choose anything. So it's a really powerful place to come from. The most powerful place to create is from nothing. And even that concept is, people get that concept to a degree, right? But there's always levels, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that there's a level I get it at that in 2 years, I'll probably get at a whole nother level. I'll be like, oh, I was so funny. I thought I had like figured out the nothing.
Young Mike, what a kid.
What an idiot. So I had achieved a level of nothing where I sat there and I go, all right, well, let's play a new game. And let's create a game, and I'm going to choose that this matters to me. And I'm going to make it important. But the thing is because I had already achieved the ability to make something unimportant, I actually cannot experience importance and caring the same way I used to.
Is that a good thing or a bad
It's a great thing.
Really?
Because it gives me a ton of freedom. So most people live in, they're bound to paradox.
Uh-huh.
And so one of them is to be obsessed and unattached at the same time. How can you be obsessed and unattached? Like, that's not possible. Like, you got to be one or the other. But because I went through that process, I'm able to hold both at the same time. I can be completely obsessed.
Is that a little paradoxical?
It's a paradox, but I'm holding the paradox.
So you're embracing it.
I'm holding the entire paradox instead of having to adopt one way of being or another. So like people they're not holding the paradox, or I used to not. I'll talk about myself. I used to not hold the paradox. I would look at it and go, I either have to be obsessed and care a lot and completely be emotionally attached to the outcomes, and it would just fuck me up, or I could be unattached and just be like, I don't give a shit about anything. Yeah. So now what I can do is be completely obsessed but unattached to any of the results of the work put in.
Isn't that's the truest nature of I would call that love, is to care about something but not have an end game in mind.
Yeah,
And you can
no
apply
agenda.
that to
No agenda.
relationships. It's not, you can apply that to relationships as well.
Absolutely, that's the place to do it.
Yeah.
The place to do it.
Because you can go into something, it's like, I don't care how this ends. I'm just here for the experience.
Yeah. And that's where, again, there's
power in that.
layers to it, right?
Yeah.
And so the closer you are to somebody, the more there is to learn there. It's a lot easier with professionally. Professionally, I'm like, easy, cake. Yeah, get me in a romantic situation, and it's like, okay, I do get tugged around a little bit. I'm not completely.
You're not a complete nihilist.
No, not complete. No, that was a
There's
phase.
some feelings there. Like,
I feel things.
you're a big teddy bear.
But I love it. I love falling in love. I love going in hard. I like the roller coaster down and going, oh my God, this feels so good. And then checking in with myself is like, dude, this feels so good. You know that the other side is going to be fucked up, right? It's like, yeah, I know. This heartbreak is going to be a rough one. Totally worth it.
Let's do it.
And let's do it. And then the heartbreak ends up being like really beautiful too. It's like, man.
It really is a no fear mindset though, because it's usually fear that limits people from diving really deep into things. It's
Absolutely.
Failure, all that. So you're eliminating.
And it's fear that.
It's a fear. It's an avoidance of a feeling. It's like, I don't want to feel this. And so one of the things that I've learned to do is to enjoy things that I used to label as painful. Like sorrow, like I enjoy sorrow in like a weird way. Have you heard of like finding joy even in sadness and things like that? That also seems like a paradox, but it's something that I've practiced over time and gone, wow, this is like the saddest. I'm actually able to feel more than I've ever been able to feel sad before, and I'm so happy about it.
There's an interesting, it's when your highs and lows are really confined, what kind of life is that? But, it's the roller coaster, right? Like when my high is up here, that means my lowest low has to be down here. There's no other way for me to get to the top. And so when you live in that world, yes, you have some incredible highs, but the converse side is that you have the low lows. And when we embrace those, when we truly embrace those energetically, then it sets us up for the next round where you learn, you move on. But life is so exciting, and to live it so like narrow. Ah,
Yeah,
just
you know what people want? You start thinking about high performers, and one of the things that high performers are trying to develop is capacity, right? And to me, range equals capacity, right? If you want to have more capacity, you need more range. You need like to be able to experience joy at the highest level, and you need to be able to experience sadness at the greatest level, right? And the more of those that we can experience, the more sadness I can experience, the more joy I can experience. And I need to go and I need to test those boundaries and push those boundaries. And sometimes step right over and go, what the fuck?
ouch.
Yeah. Woo! And
I need a tissue.
yeah, and pushing those boundaries allowed me to have that expansion allows me to have a larger experience. And I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's bring this back a little bit to some of the work that you're doing, because you've had this incredible ride. Come out of the military after 4 years, kind of go through your whole thing, and now you're in this place where you're teaching people how to live this life with somewhat of an architectural framework. But how do you get someone into a framework, with a 6-day course, and then teach them how to push those boundaries so there's almost not a framework anymore? That seems a little paradoxical, but fascinating.
Yeah, it depends on the system. So the where a lot of people enter, where I want to get them started, is language. So language, words are the language of the mind, right? Joe Dispenza talks about this. Words are the language of the mind, feelings are the language of the body. So we want to start with the mind because Western society associates way more heavily with the mind, right? You go into other cultures and they may associate more heavily with feelings. And so our minds are very developed. So what we do is we need to, we get to organize that first and create some organization by choosing our words more carefully and intentionally. So I have programs for helping people to organize their mind and also expand their mind. And then there's things that we can do with just changing some words. And what I do is I like to start with the language that someone's already using. I don't want to just say, hey, use these words instead of those words. I could do that and it would have some benefit, but I really got to hear how your mind works. I need to see what you're journaling. I need to hear how you're speaking. I go, okay, this is where they're at. And from there, we're going to change one word at a time. And you can think about it as you have these neural networks set up in your body, and they have these patterns, and these patterns are phrases. It's like, okay, we're going to change this phrase that keeps repeating. Trust me, if you heard it once, that phrase ran through your head 1 trillion times. You've practiced it well. And so what we do is, instead of trying to change the entire phrase at once, we change one word at a time. We go, okay, we're going to change this one word. Boom, how does that feel? How does that feel? How does that feel? And there's breathing exercises involved. And what we can do is we can rewire your nervous system with language, one word at a time, and some breath work. So we get you there, boom, 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 stair step you through. All of a sudden, you can see new colors you never saw before. Your body feels more relaxed than it's ever felt before, and all of a sudden creativity starts coming online. You're having thoughts you never thought before. And so that's step one. And so that can be very, very expansive for people. And then in that space, what we're doing is we're creating space, because there's usually people's language is constricting them. So what we do is we create space for them to have new thoughts, which then brings up new feelings, right? And so, which can be scary, because now, or I'm feeling something I haven't felt in 20 years, and I try to avoid that feeling this long. So what we do is we get people to that point. So we change their thinking, and then what ends up happening is people go, wow, I'm thinking differently, it's bringing up new feelings, I really don't know how to deal with that. And so that's a deeper dive. There's a 6-day retreat, and we also have a 10-week course online. So It doesn't have to be done. I like the retreat better, but a lot of people want to do it virtually. And that is start teaching people how to be with any feeling in their body. Because you actually aren't, it's not the conversation, that hard conversation with your boss or your partner that you're avoiding. You're avoiding the feeling it's going to create. And so what we do is we train you to be with any feeling that's coming up in your body and be okay with it. Accept it, love it, recognize that it's part of you. It's not something to hate, it's something to love. And so most people, you know, they indulge in certain feelings and emotions and they avoid certain feelings and emotions. And it's different from person to person. And so what we do is we teach people how to read the entire map, the entire emotional map, the entire sensational map, and then get familiar with it. And then after they get familiar with it, it takes about, we found it takes about 18 months. It takes us about a week to, if they do an online program, a week to 10 weeks to see the map and to experience the map. It takes about 18 months to get familiar with the map and start applying a lot of the frameworks that we give them. It's like, okay, when you're feeling this, it likely means that there needs to be a boundary put in place and you need to have a conversation with somebody. And so we give them a lot of frameworks to operate from that helps them create a life that's got a lot more flow. So we give them a lot of structure, but the structure creates a lot of that freedom for them.
Definitely not a quick fix there.
Not a quick fix. Well, here's the thing is
there such a thing?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't think so.
Vasectomy?
Yeah, that's a quick fix.
Well, you know, like people, when they invest themselves into something, they want quick results, and like this takes time. Like this takes energy and application, and you're reprogramming and rewiring everything.
Well, you're not fixing anything. There's nothing to fix and there's nothing broken. It's all learned behavior. Anything that's going on in your life, any way that you're being is simply something you learned.
Yeah.
So we have to unlearn it and then replace it with something that you want, right? I mean, if you want to be enlightened, you unlearn it and then you do nothing. But holding nothing, most people are never going to do that. I don't do that.
Can you do that in today's society? You know, Siddhartha does that sitting under a tree but
you're not going to participate. Yeah. So
you can be under a bridge and be enlightened.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, I'm going to hold nothing. All right, well, go out in the woods and be by yourself.
We'll see you in 10 years.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
But yeah, it's all just learned behavior. So there's nothing, the first step is recognizing there's nothing to fix, nothing broken, and it's just learned behavior because when you're approaching it from that place, it's way more manageable. Yeah, so we have fun doing that. It's a good time.
It's not necessarily unlearning those things. You're just seeing it as a different way now. You're accepting it as a different way instead of choosing to not think that way anymore. Is that?
It's going, oh, I used to think this way,
Right.
and now I see these 5 other perspectives.
It's just widening your.
Yeah, most people can see 1 degree. There's 360.
The sphere.
Yeah.
Or 6 if you're talking about Kevin Bacon. Nope. Okay.
Well, I did limit it to 360. It's really infinite.
It's
so-
infinite.
Right.
But people have a hard time wrapping their head around that.
When I wrote my first book on neural optimization, we really kind of looked at patterns, right? In our brains are different engines. They love to create patterns to minimize energy expenditure.
Yeah.
So perfect way to look at this is when you wake up in the morning, it's always routine, right? Now, that could be broken with a cell phone and how people are kind of introducing cell phones into their days, but most people, it's like you wake up and you follow the same path to the bathroom, you do whatever it is you're going to do in the bathroom, brush your teeth, take a leak, whatever. So it becomes pattern. And our brains love patterns because it allows us to minimize energy expenditure.
Right.
And so those patterns, whether it's going to the bathroom in the morning or psychological patterns, how we deal with things, how our egos get involved, just becomes a system of patterns. And the more that you live with those 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years, the harder it is to break those and reconstruct. But I love the course that you guys do because it really does simplify that. I don't want to say destruction, but it is. It's kind of like, you want to build the new mansion, you gotta kind of bulldoze the old one.
Yeah, and we have to. The number one thing we have to create is safety, and someone has to feel safe in order to destroy. Most people do, and so
Unless you're a nihilist.
And then you gotta, creating a container where it's like, hey, we're not gonna just destroy everything and then drop you off. We're gonna help you put this thing back together.
So, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like you are like a big kid, right? Like you've created this world.
That's true.
You FaceTimed me like 3 weeks ago, and you're like shirtless in Hawaii, just hanging out. Like, what's up, dude? You're like I want to be Mike when I grow up. So you talk about multiple streams of income, these coaching programs. You clearly have a much more profound message to share with the world. So what does the next couple of years of your life look like without putting you in a box?
Sure.
Opening up the infinite possibility of...
Sure. Yeah, I like picking a direction at this point. I like to think in decades. So I have a mentor. He said, ordinary people think in years, extraordinary people think in decades. The guy is the wealthiest person I know, and he's in his late 60s. I imagine he knows what the fuck he's talking about. And so I have a 10-year vision for my business. And I know that my 10-year vision will probably be realized in 3 to 5 years. And I'm pretty obsessed about that without sacrificing a good time. So I watch a lot of entrepreneurs. They're like, I'm so focused, I'm gonna sacrifice. I don't believe in sacrifice for myself, actually. They're like, oh, I'm so focused. If I am not having fun, I just stop. I will make less money and
have more fun.
And the thing is in a 5-year period, I'll get further because of that.
Yep.
And it's counterintuitive to most people, but I go by how I feel. And so I have a direction. I'm building an 8-figure coaching business, actually 9-figure, but yeah, whatever. I don't want people to start freaking out. You start talking about numbers that are too big, and I'm also helping. I have a goal of growing 10 other people's coaching businesses to 8 figures, and so many 7-figure coaching businesses, and I also. Am working with I set the goal back in August to be working with veterans organizations regarding plant medicine and other things, and within 3 months, by the way, I took my 10-year vision and I had a summit back in August, and I was talking about vision to the people, and I put it up, I put my vision on the board, and this is what I'm doing in the next 10 years. Most people would be terrified to share that with like their close friends.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, here's the whole fucking room. I want all of you to see it. By the way, if you want to help me achieve this right now, I want you to write it down. And let's write it down. I want you to past tense it. I want you to write it down in the past tense. I had everyone take what they wrote down, and we put it in an envelope. We're going to open it in 5 years. So it's an annual summit. We're going to open it in 5 years and see the progress we made. And so that's the direction I'm going. I have a vision that I'm working towards, and it's very malleable. I am open to change. I think that I used to be, and a lot of people are this way, like I set the goal and I have to achieve the goal. I'm disciplined. I'm going to do that goal no matter fucking what. And the trouble with that is things change, and the universe will deliver something I didn't see coming. And I am willing to pivot. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to look foolish in front of all my friends and everybody. And I'm willing to set my sights on this 10-year vision. And if it completely changes, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I'm going that direction. I'm fully going that direction, and I'm listening. And I like to operate from a place of things being obvious. If I'm doing something, it's because it's obvious. I'm supposed to do this. I'm like, why are you doing this? It's so obvious. Yeah. And so it's
Why aren't you?
it's getting really good at listening. It's like,
What was that?
So, yeah, where are we going? I don't know. My personal life got completely. I demolished my personal life this last year, in the process of divorce.
And that was, if you're okay with us talking about this, if not, we're going to talk about it anyway.
Perfect.
Because we like being uncomfortable.
Just push me over the edge.
Yeah. Literally, right over
I'm
the
so
edge.
tender. I'm so tender.
What's man thinks he can fly. A good friend pushes him. A great friend jumps with him.
Let's jump.
Let's do this.
But you in kind of how you live, you guys were very, very public about your divorce.
Uh-huh.
And it was beautiful.
Mm.
I think people should aspire to divorce like that. We kind of come into this world thinking like, oh, well, till death do us part. No, bullshit. Like, statistically, that's just not going to happen. So, like, if you're going to get divorced, maybe we should. That's a good course for you.
Yeah.
The 6-day course on how to
divorce.
Yeah.
Conscious. There's this concept floating out there called conscious uncoupling, and I usually hate these anything that starts with conscious something. I'm like, because a lot of people are like just throwing it around and it's like,
who's selling a mastermind behind this bullshit?
it's like, yeah, we're doing this conscious uncoupling thing, and then you look behind the curtain, you're like, oh, this is fucked up.
Yeah. Like, you just punched her in the face last night. There's
Yeah.
no conscious uncoupling about it.
Yeah. So I do know some people that do it better than others. Really, our ability to separate and divorce and still love each other more than ever and still be friends. We spent New Year's together with 50 of our friends, and it was beautiful. We had a great time. The last night we hung out, and it was just me and her, and we went to our separate rooms, but we had a toast together and everything. And it's a testament to the work we've done. So we've done so much work around communication, language. We both know how to navigate our emotions, our feelings. We have a really great relationship with ourselves. We have a great relationship to the universe. We trust the universe. We trust the process of life. We understand that things change. We embrace change. And we separated back in March. And 2019 was really heavy for me in a lot of ways. It was dense. There was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of grief and sorrow, and it was really beautiful. And I got to learn a lot about myself. We were married for 9 years, and there were things that I thought I knew about myself that I couldn't know about myself until I went through this process. And I am excited about. And we're rooting for each other. I'm excited about where we're going to be in a year from now or 2 years from now. I'm excited to see her date somebody. I could open up text messages. I think I screenshot a text message and put it on an Instagram story one day. I don't know if you saw that, but it was basically like she was texting me about how much she's rooting for me to win in life, and she shared like, I hope you find the partner, a partner that's like gonna take you to the next level, and I feel the same thing about her.
And it's a genuine wish and desire for
It's
each other.
genuine. Yeah. And as we're going through the process, she goes to a divorce workshop, and where they talk about the logistics of divorce and the legal aspects of divorce, and she calls me a few days later, and I'm hanging out in Hawaii. I'm hanging out in Hawaii. I'm spending time with a really good friend who's a beautiful woman in Hawaii. So from the outside looking in, like, Mike's hooking up with this chick, and it's like, well, I'm hanging out with this woman. We're having a great time. We're not dating, but most people in a relationship, they're getting a divorce. If the guy is in Hawaii hanging out with this beautiful woman, the wife would be fucking pissed, and that's not the case. Like, they even text each other, and are going, "Hey, I hope you're having a great time." Whatever.
Yeah.
Does
And
Mike really snore that loud when he's with you?
that's right. I tape my mouth shut.
Cut that.
Anyways, we got on the phone and she goes, "Oh yeah, like, she started informing me of things to look out for." You know, oh yeah, we got to navigate this. You did this, I did that. We got to like, so when we do the paperwork, we just need to make sure that this all lines up, and you know, we're going to minimize the cost, and you know, commitment to no lawyers, and you know, I came to him and I said, look, let's look at what's standard here. What's standard operating procedure for divorce? What's fair? What is, you know, what has been set up? I know historically that men usually get the shaft in these situations, and I'm okay with that. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with the standard. I know the standard is definitely favors the woman, but you know what? I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I have no fucking idea. So, you know, this is what society has set up. I'm operating inside these rules. I'm choosing to play this game. I live in the United States. I'm gonna do that, and yeah, whatever's fair is fair. And you know, I know that certain things are gonna happen in the next few years that I'm gonna be paying for, and that's okay. I won't say it's ended. The relationship continues on, but it's different now, is because we're committed to being each other's growth partners and doing what was like she had set a vision for herself and who she wanted to become, and I had that for myself as well. And we were holding each other back, and we recognized that we had hit a point where the way forward was apart.
It's archaic, but did you ever read The Road Less Traveled? The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck?
No.
I love this one, and I think it was like in 1975 he wrote this, and it was probably one of the original self-help books out there. But he said true love is nurturing someone else's spiritual and emotional growth. And we oftentimes in relationships come back to this. I did this in my marriage, you know, but it's like, I love myself in this relationship more than I love the other person. And when we get to that point, then it's like, it's fish love, it's flower love. But it's like when you can nurture someone else's spiritual and emotional growth from afar, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think it's just so crazy to think that a relationship can be stronger and healthier and more loving outside of the label of marriage too.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you guys have now.
Yeah.
Because now you guys are not together, and yet there's still that strength there.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important. That maybe was or was not there when you were married. And it's just I think it's just so interesting to think about that, how you could have a stronger, better, more loving relationship with someone after you would get a divorce. It's like such an opposite thing that you would assume that it would, you know. It's interesting.
It's a new thing, really. You know, it's 2020, and
Happy New Year.
Yeah, the world looks very different. I mean, if you think about where the concept of marriage came from, you know, there was probably 150 people you grew up with. The neighboring town had a hot daughter. You're gonna give them a bunch of sheep in exchange for her hand in marriage. The father would then give the daughter away in exchange for land and sheep, which is kind of strange. And then it was more like it was a transaction.
And we're dead in 10 years.
And then, you didn't live past 40. So there's, in 2020, I can whip out my phone, go on Tinder, and meet a million different people. But there's infinite possibilities that are available. We're interacting with way more people. You know, I'm 38, no kids. I've done a lot of personal development. I've changed a lot. People used to not change very much in a given period of time, in a decade. We have access to so much information. So who we are is changing at such a rapid rate. The possibility that we're gonna run in parallel at the same distance, at the same speed the whole time is really unrealistic.
It's a statistical improbability.
Yeah, and so
we talk about that all the time, like especially when you talk about longevity and living longer these days, and I mean,
yeah. So you know, I'm gonna live to be 150.
Yeah.
And my thing is, I'm 40 right now. So if I find the love of my life and I get married and I really try to do till death do us part, that's 110 years with someone. That's a long fucking time.
Yeah, like is is that possible?
No,
think
it's
about
not.
how often people change and evolve and grow, and is that ever on the same path as that other, especially when you are talking about living along.
Here's my thought on this one, is that you can find some, love is love, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about plant medicine as we transition. See how I did that? Yeah. Out of this conversation. But why is it possible, have a 3-year relationship, lease a person, and then go lease someone else, and then maybe come back to that person, I started with a Lexus. I tried a Maserati. I'm going to come back to the Lexus. There's nothing wrong with that.
I do know people who they set up a contract to renew every year, 2 year, 3 year, versus this debt do you part thing. Yeah, there's some alternative models that are emerging right now.
That
so
makes so much sense.
yeah, and then because the truth is you're having to choose that person from moment to moment, day to day. Like, you're choosing to be in a relationship, and I like the idea of hey, let's check back in a year. Where are we really at? Instead of just assuming yeah, everything's fine. Everything's not fine.
It's funny. You have a 10-year plan for your business, but how many people have a 10-year plan for their relationship? That's the one thing that we fail time and time again at, is we plan our finances, our retirement, we plan our work week, we plan our work years, our business goals. But how many people actually sit down with their partner and say, what are we going to accomplish in the next 12 months? And if you can hold people accountable for those goals, your probability of success goes up. But it's just well, I like you, you like me, we kind of like each other naked, let's watch Netflix.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good practice, because that's one reason that the relationship transition is, imagine 10 years from now, I'm like, it's just not working.
Yeah.
I left 2 business relationships in the last couple years, and both of them were, let's set a 10-year vision. And I got this feeling in my body of I don't want to be in a relationship with these people in 10 years. I don't want to be in this committed, we got to share a vision together and we're moving the same direction vision. I was I actually don't want to be in that tight of a relationship with these people for that long.
Right.
So I was time to leave. Time to be in a new space.
And it's so important to honor and respect those gut feelings and those instincts that you get. It's so important to okay, why am I getting this feeling? And if I am, then this means something. And let's do something.
And this is why having that map is so important. Is you get that map, you get familiar with that map, and then you go, oh, when I have that feeling, that means something's off.
Right.
What's off? My spidey sense went off. If I get angry, if I'm in a business meeting and I get angry, I immediately get on the phone with my coach. I'm call him up and be something's up. Something's up. Let's and usually it takes about a week. I'm all right, something's off here. If I'm getting angry with somebody, it's a button got pushed. And when I get angry, I'm not angry with someone else. I may initially think I'm angry at somebody else, but I'm angry that I've crossed some personal boundary. So I've agreed to do something that I should have never agreed to do. And now I'm being, I might have a business partner trying to hold me to some deadline or something like that. I go, I actually don't want to do this. And I'm committed to living my life this way, and I've crossed the personal boundary, and I'm really angry with myself. And so, where's that boundary? Where do I get to reestablish it? And then I get to surrender to the process, and that is, I get to communicate what it is that's going on for me, and the surrender is, I have no idea how they're going to respond to that. And sometimes they respond in a way where I'm that was pretty cool. And sometimes it's oh, fuck, man. This whole thing just went down. All right.
So, yeah, let's transition. As I'm sitting over here working on my melanoma.
It is pretty warm out
I'm
here.
a little parched. No, so we, in about 2 months, are going to be joining you in Costa Rica for some plant medicine. I want to talk a little bit about this, because as we really focus on life to the max and helping people achieve their life to the max, as we talk to people like you who are really helping reshape the world in the way that I think we all want to see more of, this becomes an integral part of a conversation that becomes a little bit more of the collective consciousness. And I know we hate that word. So let's consciously couple on ayahuasca and
Perfect.
penetrate us with your knowledge about this stuff. Damn, that was
Good word choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the keywords packed in. Google's gonna love it.
SEO.
Yeah, SEO.
You know, I speak in meta tags. But so we're taking some vets down there, and we really talk about PTSD with vets, and a lot of what vets suffer from, whether that's combat trauma or just really the transition from military life to civilian life, and what that means. And you've done some really incredible work with taking vets on these retreats, helping them prepare for an experience like this, and then helping them take that experience and apply that to their life. And one of the things that we hear about is everyone's into plant medicine, right? But I want to really take a step back and look at your approach to this and say that, no, this isn't for everybody. And it's not just the solution. You know, there's not this great catharsis that comes out of this, but it's like, it's what you do before and after. So talk to us a little bit about how you're approaching plant medicine as a viable tool for this collective consciousness.
Yeah, we got to be, if we're taking Westerners into plant medicine and psychedelic medicine, we've got to be careful because our culture does not support it. And so everybody that grew up in Western society has been taught that it's bad for you, that and all these things. So our society is set up more to be alcohol friendly, which is like a feel less drug instead of where the psychedelics are more on the feel more side of things. And so we're not really set up to be successful. Yeah. we're not set up to be successful with psychedelics. And so for me, there's got to be a lot of preparation going in. And that is, we got to prepare the mental state, and we got to prepare the emotional state. And also, if we can, train people to be able to surrender. If I can teach you how to surrender, and you're hearing me say that and you don't understand what I'm talking about, you may not have had the experience yet. And it's something that has to be experienced. To explain it, it would be lacking. And to teach someone how to surrender before going into that space and being open to any possibility before going into that space, we can do that without medicine. We can do that through, days of multiple days at a retreat that includes a lot of different methods and meditations and exercises and all this type of stuff. So I'm really big on prepping someone with, let's see how far we can get you before we throw in performance enhancing drugs, right? It's like you wouldn't want to give a high schooler a bunch of steroids before, and go, like, yeah, we're going to get you up to a 500-pound squat as fast as possible so you can get in the NFL and all this stuff. It's like, no, you would take that athlete as far as you possibly could naturally, and then you would start playing around with, more advanced supplements, more maybe some drugs and all these things to push those boundaries. And the same thing with the mind is, let's see how far we can get you with language, how far can we get you with meditation and all this kind of stuff. All right, now we're there, we're playing around with these boundaries. I'm gonna give you a little bit further of a push. And I know I was just making the analogy as performance enhancing drugs, because what we're talking about is not drugs at all. These are things that we co-evolved with that are we're made to consume. Mm-hmm. So when we drink ayahuasca, it interacts with our body, and it's been interacting with human bodies for thousands of years. So this isn't something new, and it's not harmful. I've yet to notice any negative impacts. This is all positive, and that's the one differentiation in this analogy that I'm giving. But it's like, how far can we take you there before we dump in the most intense experience of your entire fucking life?
Makes sense.
Yeah. You could do a small dose.
Yeah.
You could do like a half cup and still be in ceremony without, getting your...
And the other caveat to that is that we leave Costa Rica and I fly to Los Angeles to run 100 miles.
I don't know how you're going to do
that.
I heard about this. I heard you were going to run 100 miles.
Yeah.
That's nuts,
I
man.
like to keep things interesting in my life, you know.
like torturous? Because that's just.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all.
You know what? Here's the thing, right? We are raising money for Operation Underground
It is
Railroad,
for a very good
which
cause.
is a charity that really pulls
Yeah.
kids out of the sex trafficking world.
Yeah,
And
it's very
so when I look at running 100 miles, that is nothing compared to what some of these kids go through.
Yeah.
So will I suffer through 100 miles to raise money in a nanosecond and without hesitation?
Yeah.
We've kind of come to that point, so we're running short on time. So we want to throw the life to the max question out to you. So you've got one wish in your entire life, change the world. What is it?
One wish.
And you can't ask for more wishes.
Damn it! Oh, that's what I was gonna go to. One wish. That everyone could breathe deeply.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Life to the Max podcast with your hosts,
Janna Breslin.
and Evan DeMarco. We've been fortunate enough to spend about an hour with the incredible Mike Bledsoe, and we're going to spend a lot more time with you in Costa Rica, so we're hoping to do a version 2.0 of this after we've had a chance to really,
Dive deep.